Lewis Hamilton returned to the British throne at Silverstone for the ninth time at the end of a thrilling Sunday, in which Ferrari was unfortunately missing. The English champion ran the best race of all in terms of adapting to the changing conditions. Overtaking Russell with low grip put him in the best option for the first stop. The two McLarens were the biggest threat, but they committed harakiri twice. First, by penalizing the driver with the best long run yesterday, which is Piastri, making him lose 18 seconds, and second, by trusting to copy the tire choice made by Mercedes for Lewis. Norris had another set of mediums with which he would certainly have held off Verstappen and could have attacked for the win. Hamilton did nothing but manage the last stint with the soft tires impeccably, showing that the years go by but his sensitivity in exploiting the tire remains intact. The last stint with Verstappen in strong recovery was an image that brought back memories of their past battles. Lewis Hamilton's victory is a confirmation of the concrete steps taken by the Brackley team to solve a significant part of the balance and correlation problems. From what we can see, James Allison's technicians are back on the right track, mechanically and aerodynamically overturning the front end of the W15. Midway through the season, Mercedes and Ferrari have both won with both drivers, while more than the best car, McLaren Verstappen, has won 7 out of 12 races. Ferrari is still second in the Constructors' Championship thanks to the first good 8 rounds and the mishaps of Verstappen and Norris in Austria. However, after Monaco, they have only experienced technically disastrous weekends. If Maranello does not react effectively, it will be difficult to hold the position for long. It is a very complex issue. We must acknowledge that the package anticipated in Barcelona has currently been rejected if there are too many high-speed corners. The design director, Enrico Cardile, who had been on his way out of Ferrari for a few weeks, has officially left the team, but the work does not stop. There are 300 people in the various departments of aerodynamics, simulation, and mechanics tasked with producing a valid response to the problems. In the immediate future, it is expected that the SF24 with the latest update can be used in Hungary where, at least in theory, the range of medium-slow corners should not present uncontrollable instability. But is Ferrari in chaos? Enrico Cardile resigned yesterday as technical director of the chassis area, and the role has been taken on by Fred Vasseur on an interim basis. The team principal of the Maranello team as of Sunday evening had assured that the Italian engineer departing for Aston Martin was still regularly at his post to maintain a house of cards that only he still believes in. The departure of the 55-year-old engineer is certainly not a surprise. We had anticipated Lawrence Stroll's interest in May for the technician that had been working in Maranello for 2 decades, considered the right person to organize the technical work group at the new team headquarters that is nearing completion and to bring the Ferrari know-how on Agile Car 2026 and the new power unit. Enrico Cardile, an engineer with an aerodynamics background, is not an F1 designer, but is considered a skilled organizer of the technical office. His departure from the Ferrari racing division, although only officially announced yesterday, cannot be considered a surprise. On the contrary, some have seen Fred Vasseur's move to also take on the technical delegation as a surprise, a confusion. All nonsense. The feeling, on the contrary, is that the plan that the Frenchman has had in mind for some time is being put into action, defining a Ferrari according to his wishes and those of President John Elkann. It is true that Enrico Cardile was active until the last moment, and it is true that he must take responsibility for the recent performance of the SF24 single-seater, which stalled in terms of development. But it is equally true that the head's plan foresees a different design with figures that will move immediately after the summer break. It would be easy to think that Adrian Newey could be the solution to all the troubles, but the legendary English car designer still does not seem convinced to move to Maranello. Some were even proclaiming that the Englishman had already signed. It is much more likely that he will let the option signed with the Ferrari team expire at the end of the month, despite John Elkann's emissaries having raised the financial offer. Adrian Newey wants to be a free spirit, an external consultant without the constraints of daily presence in the racing department, being there when needed for the definition of a new car, but then stepping back and following the many interests he has developed over the years. Fred Vasseur, therefore, has taken on the role of interim technical director so as not to assign the position to those already present. It is evident that he is waiting for someone who needs to be freed up to answer the call. This is a Mr. X because it will not be Loic Serra, the Frenchman who will arrive on October 1st from Mercedes along with Jerome D'Ambrosio, the Belgian who will become deputy team principal. Leclerc will be the head of chassis performance engineering, reporting directly to the new technical director, Mr. X, overseeing various areas such as track operations, aerodynamic development, and performance development. Lewis Hamilton has suggested some names, and they are not necessarily all from Mercedes, indicating that it will not be just the technical director arriving. In the meantime, Cédric Sambardier, a French composite expert who previously had experience with Sauber, joined Maranello from Red Bull at the beginning of the month. And Fred Vasseur will never admit it, but all attention is already focused on designing the Ferrari for Lewis Hamilton. Inside the Ferrari factory, it is not referred to by its project code, 677, but by the name of the Silverstone winner who will drive it next year. We have already anticipated that it will be a completely new car compared to the SF24. A pull rod front suspension design, and the chassis will be redone not only to accommodate different mechanisms, but also to set a different weight distribution, with a monocoque that will move the cockpit further back to have a greater distance between the front wheel and the side pods, following a design favored by Red Bull and McLaren. And the SF24? The setback with the developments that debuted in Spain was a heavy blow. Since Monte Carlo, Ferrari has lost competitiveness, falling from being Red Bull's challenger to the fourth force, overtaken by Mercedes. At Silverstone, there was no room to balance without triggering porpoising early on. It's a severe setback and is surprising. The direct consequence was the freezing of the car's performance after Imola. Considering that each team typically gains a tenth of a second in performance per month, the others have instantly pulled away. Countermeasures are possible and have been considered by the engineers at Maranello since the Friday of Barcelona. Some are for the short term, others for the medium term. The updated car with Charles Leclerc on Friday was completely limited, exploiting the lower resistance and the 10 points of downforce more in the slow sections, but losing 20 in the fast sections, a gap of 6/10 from Mercedes and McLaren. In 2 weeks in Hungary, the engineers think they will be able to manage the balance of the SF24 more decently, to have more encouraging responses from the update, more understanding, and fewer compromises. This should stabilize the 2/10 gain in the slow sections. Nonetheless, the countermeasures will neither be quick nor painless. After all, there is also a need to analyze why the bouncing issue has reemerged. It is a clear mistake in terms of efficiency in the overall development of the single-seater. Realistically, with one less package, it is not feasible to catch up with the competition during the season unless they make mistakes. Carlos Sainz, after the disappointment for Ferrari's performance in the British Grand Prix at the Silverstone circuit, explained that the Maranello team's technicians have understood where to intervene. So the hope is that there will be a course correction for a car that suddenly cannot have become a disaster. The Hungarian Grand Prix and the Singapore Grand Prix are marked in red on the Formula One calendar because they are tracks that, at least on paper, should restore hope to the SF24 to perform well again. They will try to salvage what they can, considering that the development budget for this car has now been spent, and they do not want to divert resources destined for the 2025 Formula One car. In this context, Charles Leclerc's moment of discouragement can also be understood. The Monegasque driver has entered a negative spiral from which only he can emerge. He must believe in his potential and his ability to beat Lewis Hamilton next year. Fred Vasseur, a great friend of the Monegasque, is not providing the human support that Charles might need in this phase. At least it does not seem to be a current problem or a priority, because evidently there are more urgent scenarios to construct. In a Ferrari that is quietly changing its skin, several technical figures have started to send their resumes around, which means we could soon see other key team members leave the Italian side.